This is Cody or the Wolf. This is C Squared. C Squared Music Studios. Going to go over some basics about the guitar. Get you familiar with the instruments and things that you should and should not do. Some tools you might probably want to have along with having the instrument. There's some other goodies that usually go with it to help you to play it, like a pick. You don't need a pick, you can use your fingers, but a lot of people prefer it. You need strings on the guitar. If they break, it's real hard to play them, and a couple other good things. So we're going to spend a few minutes right now just talking about some basic things that are good to have to get going with, and some basic practicing techniques that are good to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about the guitar real quick. Good to know the basic parts of the instrument. This obviously is the guitar. There's a number of parts that make up the guitar. We have the body of the guitar. If you have an acoustic or if you have an arch tap, you might have some sort of sound hole or F-hole that'll help project the sound. This is what's called the bridge. This is mounted to the body. The strings generally come through here. The strings are aligned on what's called the saddle. You'll see that there. Sometimes it's bone, plastic. They use different materials. This helps hold the strings in place at the bridge, and it also helps transfer tone to the body. Coming up, you obviously have the neck, but there's multiple parts to the neck. There's the neck wood itself, and then there is the fingerboard wood, which sits on top of the neck. The metal pieces are called frets. Nickel, silver, EVO, stainless steel, made out of a number of different material. Traveling farther up, the strings sit across on what's called a nut. That holds the strings in place and acts as a 0 fret. And then you have the headstock and the tuning machines. This is what we generally tune the instrument with. So, starting from top, going back down, headstock, tuners, nut, neck, fingerboard, frets, sound hole, body, bridge, saddle. Good things to know. We talked about tuning. There's several ways of tuning the instrument. Pitch pipes are still used. The most common is probably right now just a tuner app that you can download to your smartphone, to your tablet. Those are becoming very common. There are these little guys, which are great, especially if you're performing acoustically. These clip right onto your headstock, and you can angle it over and clip that on, and it'll give you a nice precise way to tune your instrument. While you're performing, you can just leave that right there and keep an eye on it. Another common thing if you're performing, pedal tuners. This will be along in your pedal chain. Plug this in, you can kick on it and get a good tuning thing. And probably my favorite tuner right now, especially for starting out, one of these guys. It has a mic, so you don't necessarily have to plug it in, or it has an input, so you can't plug it in. The other thing is, most of these generally have a metronome built in along with tuning capabilities, which excellent for practice. If you're already one of my students, you know I believe in metronomes. They're evil, but they keep you honest. So it's a good thing to have. Another good thing to have is something like this. This is called a string winder. And if you're changing your strings, it's rough on the machine. It tends to rock the wood loose, and it's very slow and tedious. So with one of these, you can kind of put it on the end of the tuning machine, crank it up a lot faster, and most of them are also notched. So if you have a bridge that has bridge pins to change the strings in, this notch will help you safely remove the pins without risking breaking them or doing damage to the instrument. So this is another good thing to have. The last thing I want to mention is some sort of fingerboard oil. If you have a rosewood fingerboard, at least once a year. If you have something more like ebony in a dry climate should be really oiled at least once a month. It's wood. It can dry out and crack, and you don't want to do that. So just keep a little fingerboard oil around. Keep an eye on it. I won't say you can't over oil it, because you certainly could, and that could loosen up the frets. But a good thing to keep in mind is with rosewood, at least once a year, once a season if you want to. If you're practicing a lot and you don't change the strings a lot, they start to build up with grime, oil it. If you have ebony, wenge, one of the more exotic woods, once a month, just to keep your instrument happy. Now, we're going to talk about, let's move some of these things out of the way. The other thing you should have is, a good idea is to have a music stand. It's not in the shot right now, so you can actually see what my hands are doing, but it's a good idea to have a music stand so whatever you're practicing, you can prop up, pay attention to, maybe put your metronome right there on the stand as well. So, that's the instrument. The instrument, generally, you're going to have 6 strings. We have a high E, a low E, and then 4 strings in the middle. Most people remember the E's because there's 2 of them. But you actually have an E, an A, a D, a G, a B, and your high E. Those are the strings from low to high. When we talk about low to high, we're talking about reference to pitch. Physically, this E is physically higher than this E. But when we talk about music, we're generally going to reference pitch and not so much physicality. So this is our low E, this is our high E. The guitar is strung from low to high, E, A, D, G, B, E. We'll say that a few times. Eventually you will have that memorized and it'll be like nothing. So good thing to remember. Frets also, 1st fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret. Most guitars are going to have 15, at least 15 frets. Some will have 18, 20, some have 24, some have more. But you're going to have at least 15 frets. And when we talk about, because this comes up often with some of my students, and if you're one of my students watching this, you probably know this has happened to you. I tell you, no, wrong position, you need to move up. And instantly you think physical and you go here. But if you think about going up on an elevator and you're on the 3rd floor and you want to go up, here's your 3rd floor, that's going up to the 5th floor. So frets going up, you're actually going to go up in number of frets. So hopefully, as we go on, this will help. Hopefully you have your guitar is in tune. If you don't happen to have a tuner, you can tune the guitar to itself. If you know a song, and Sanitary by Metallica comes to mind very quickly, it starts with a low E. If you have that in tune, then as you can see in the book, it tells you how to sort of tune it to itself. And basically it's telling you if this is low E, this would be F, this would be G, this A, and that's our next string, A. Same thing on the A string. We have B, C, D, there's our next string. So D, E, F, G, there's our next string. The G string sort of throws it for a loop. We've been matching it to the 5th fret, now we're only going to match it to the 4th, because we have the G, we have A, we have B, and there's our next string. Our B string back to the 5th fret. We have B, C, D, E, and those match up again. So you can tune the guitar in a number of ways if you don't have your tuner handy. A lot of the modern acoustics have a tuner built right in. Even some of the electrics are starting to have tuners built right in. But as you develop your ear, you start to rely on the tuner less and less. So there's our guitar basics.